At exactly 3:27 a.m., something exploded over the airfield in Ivanovo, Russia. Less than 10 seconds later, a second blast rocked the skies above Murmansk. Then another one in Ryazan. Then Irkutsk. Then the Amur region. It wasn't random. It wasn't one missile. It was a synchronized, pre-planned assault, coordinated across 5 different military airbases deep inside Russian territory. What was hit? Not just regular military vehicles. These were strategic air bases that housed Russia's long-range bombers, including the Tu-95 Bear, Tu-22 M3, and the A-50 radar control plane. These are the planes responsible for launching long-range cruise missiles, missiles that have pounded Ukraine's cities since 2022. But on that early morning of June 1, 2025, those very aircrafts were burning on the tarmac, shattered and broken from above. Local videos surfaced within minutes. Flames rose into the dark sky. Huge black smoke clouds covered the bases. Sirens wailed in the background. Russian emergency units scrambled. Panic spread among military personnel. For many, it looked like a full-on invasion. But no soldiers crossed the border. There was no foreign jet in the sky. Only one thing moved: drones. Dozens of them. Moving fast, hitting hard, and gone before anyone could stop them. In Ivanovo, satellite images showed the full aftermath. At least 6 heavy bombers were completely destroyed. Another 3 were heavily damaged. In Murmansk, one of Russia's few A-50 surveillance planes was taken out, a key tool in tracking Ukrainian airspace and guiding missile strikes. It had a radar dome the size of a bus, and it burned for hours. In Amur, fuel depots exploded. Fireballs lit up the forest nearby. No air defense system caught them in time. The radar systems were late. The operators didn't expect an attack from inside. But that's exactly what made this strike so different. These drones weren't launched from Ukraine's borders. They were already inside Russia. Hidden. Waiting. And when the command came, they all rose like ghosts from the dark. Some launched from sheds, some from rooftops, and some from disguised trucks on country roads. The attack was fast, brutal, and direct. Ukrainian sources later confirmed the name, Operation Spiderweb. And this wasn't just a name. The web was real. A setup that stretched across 5 regions, timed to the second, and carried out with precision. The damage? Ukraine claimed over $7 billion in losses to the Russian military. And more importantly, nearly 40 aircrafts either destroyed or rendered useless. That's about a third of Russia's strategic bomber force, crippled in just one night. By the time sunrise came, one thing was clear. This was the most successful Ukrainian strike inside Russia since the war began. And no one saw it coming. Operation Spiderweb was not an accident. It was not a quick decision. It was a carefully planned and deeply coordinated military strike prepared months in advance by Ukraine's intelligence services and defense forces. The goal was clear: hit the heart of Russia's airstrike capability from the inside, and do it without crossing a single border. The operation started with smuggling. Ukrainian intelligence operatives, working inside Russia, began transporting pieces of drones into the country. These parts were hidden inside shipments of construction material, farm supplies, and other goods that moved across Russia without suspicion. The drones were brought in piece by piece, then stored in sheds, garages, rooftops, and even near civilian buildings, waiting for the right moment. Each drone had a single job: to target a specific aircraft or military facility at 5 Russian airfields: Ivanovo, Murmansk, Ryazan, Irkutsk, and Amur. These locations were chosen because they held strategic aircraft used in launching cruise missile strikes into Ukraine. The Tu-95 and Tu-22 bombers stored there had been active in recent attacks on Kyiv, Dnipro, and Lviv. Russia thought these bases were out of reach. They were wrong. The drones weren't launched all at once from one base. They were activated separately, from inside Russian territory, close to each target. Some were launched from hidden compartments inside delivery trucks. Others were triggered from under rooftops or hidden sheds less than 5 kilometers from the bases. The strikes were timed and synchronized to hit at the same hour, early morning when alertness was low, and the bases were quiet. The number of drones used was shocking, 117 in total. They weren't big or expensive. Most were small, fast, and explosive, enough to damage planes, destroy fuel storage, and cause chain reactions. The Ukrainian forces gave each drone a precise target. Some hit wings. Others aimed at cockpit zones or fuel tanks. A few were set to explode near radar systems and surveillance equipment. Each drone was manually programmed and operated by teams that had studied their targets for weeks. Ukrainian intelligence had used satellite images, Russian social media, and intercepted calls to map out the positions of planes, hangars, and refueling stations. Every drone hit where it was supposed to. By the end of the operation, over 40 Russian aircraft were no longer usable. Satellite images from US and European agencies confirmed destroyed bombers, burned hangars, and smoking ruins across the 5 regions. In some cases, it looked like entire wings of the airfields had been erased. Russia's defense ministry released no official statement for over 10 hours. When they finally spoke, they tried to downplay the attack, calling it minor disruptions. But leaked footage, shared by Russian military bloggers and verified by independent sources, showed massive fireballs, emergency crews, and destroyed aircraft lying motionless on the tarmac. Ukrainian officials confirmed the operation within 24 hours. They called it a planned action to reduce enemy bombing capacity. The Security Service of Ukraine, SBU, and the Defense Intelligence of Ukraine both claimed responsibility. They didn't release full details, but insiders confirmed that the drones had been placed over the course of several weeks, with help from agents working quietly inside Russian towns. This kind of operation had never been done before. Not by Ukraine. Not by any nation fighting a larger power without stepping over the border. Operation Spiderweb showed that modern warfare was not just about firepower, but about timing, patience, and intelligence. And it worked. Russia's long-range air attack ability was cut by nearly a third in one morning. All from the inside. All without a warning. And the world took notice. The success of Operation Spiderweb wasn't luck. It was the result of deep planning, undercover movement, and silent execution. Ukraine's intelligence network didn't just deliver drones across the border. They built a system inside Russia, right under the eyes of Russian security. And what made it so effective was how well everything was hidden and how carefully the operation was broken into stages. The first part of the mission was placement. Ukrainian agents and local collaborators worked quietly for months to smuggle drone parts into Russia. They didn't fly them in. They didn't launch from Ukraine. Instead, they hid them in delivery trucks, farming trailers, tool sheds, and even abandoned buildings. Some drones were placed near civilian areas. Others were placed just miles from the airbases. In several regions, the drones were broken down into small parts: wings, batteries, explosives, frames. These parts were carried separately to avoid detection. Once inside Russia, the parts were stored in safe locations and reassembled slowly. Some were kept under rooftops. Others were built inside trucks disguised as maintenance or service vehicles. No single location had more than a few units, and no one moved in groups. It was quiet, slow, and invisible. The second part of the mission was mapping and target selection. Ukrainian intelligence gathered satellite images, intercepted communications, and followed Russian military blog posts and videos to locate exactly where the planes were parked. They identified where fuel depots were stored, where hangars were weakest, and even where security cameras had blind spots. This information was sent back to Kiev, where military analysts built a full strike model. Every drone was given a location, a target, and a launch path. The third part was timing. The drones weren't launched randomly. They were activated in the same hour, in different parts of the country, creating confusion and panic. Most were launched in the dark hours of early morning when personnel were limited, alertness was low, and night shift rotations were switching out. The drones took off from trucks and rooftops within short range, some just 2 kilometers from their targets, allowing them to reach their marks in less than 60 seconds. Once in the air, the drones flew low and fast. They were equipped with explosive warheads just strong enough to disable planes, destroy radar domes, or trigger fuel fires. Many went straight for engines and fuel tanks, targeting the parts that couldn't be quickly replaced. One A-50 aircraft in Murmansk was hit directly on its radar dish, knocking out one of Russia's key airborne warning systems. In Ivanova, drones destroyed bombers used in recent missile strikes. In Ryazan, several drones exploded near fuel tanks, causing secondary blasts that spread to nearby storage zones. Russia's air defense was caught off guard. Their systems were built to detect incoming missiles or drones from outside the country, not from nearby towns or their own soil. Early reports show that some drones weren't even engaged because they flew under radar range. Others were ignored by operators who didn't recognize them as a threat in time. By the time the military response began, most of the drones had already completed their mission. Some self-destructed after impact. Others triggered fires that kept burning long after the attack was over. Emergency responders arrived late in several areas because of confusion and the wide spread of the attacks. Russia's military communication systems were overwhelmed, with no clear understanding of where the attack came from or how to respond. In total, at least 40 aircraft were damaged or destroyed. These included 2 95 bombers that had been used to launch cruise missiles into Ukraine, 2 22M3 bombers with long-range capabilities, and an A-50 early warning aircraft that coordinated radar and missile defense operations. Some of these planes were one-of-a-kind or rare. And even the ones that weren't, can't be replaced overnight. Ukrainian sources later revealed that some drones used basic parts. Many were assembled using commercial-grade materials with custom software and camera systems. The total cost of the entire drone fleet used in the attack was estimated at less than $30 million, a fraction of the billions in damage they caused. And none of the drones were traced back to Ukrainian territory, which means Russia couldn't blame foreign launch points or cross-border attacks. Instead, Russia was forced to admit, quietly, that the strike came from within. Their own land, their own people, their own blind spots. And that's why it worked. Not because Ukraine had bigger weapons, but because it had better eyes, better patience, and the nerve to pull it off from the inside. The impact of Operation Spiderweb is not only about the damage, it's about what it changes moving forward. This was not a border clash or a drone skirmish near the front line. This was a full-scale strike deep inside Russian territory. And it happened without warning, without a single Ukrainian soldier crossing into Russian land. This operation was more than a military success. It was a direct hit on Russia's strategic confidence. The 295 and 222 bombers that were destroyed in Ivanova and Ryazan had been used for years to launch long-range attacks against Ukrainian cities. These aircraft were seen as untouchable, parked far from the front lines, surrounded by radar and defense systems. But now, almost a third of them are either destroyed or too damaged to use. The A-50 airborne early warning plane destroyed in Murmansk was one of only a few Russia had. It was essential for tracking movements in Ukrainian skies and giving orders to missile defense systems. Without it, Russia's ability to monitor and respond to airspace threats has been severely weakened. This isn't just a blow to equipment, it's a hole in their defense network. The strike also hit several fuel depots, communication systems, and radar units that support daily military operations. In Irkutsk and Amur, the fire damage spread across storage areas, leaving entire wings of the bases out of use. Recovery isn't just a matter of cleaning up. It will take months, maybe longer, to rebuild what was lost. And even if Russia replaces some of the equipment, it's already too late. The message has been sent. And this is where the timing matters. The operation happened just days before international peace talks were set to resume in Istanbul. Ukraine didn't wait to speak through words, it sent a direct message through action. President Zelensky said shortly after the strike, "Peace is the goal, but surrender is not the path." Ukraine is showing that it won't sit and wait while cities are bombed. It will reach deep, it will plan quietly, and it will hit back, smartly. Russia's response has been minimal so far. State media barely mentioned the attacks. Official military channels released only short statements calling it an isolated incident. But the silence speaks louder than the words. Inside Russian circles, the pressure is rising. Reports say that some commanders have already been questioned. Others removed. One general in Ryazan was reportedly dismissed less than 24 hours after the attack. This also changes the way other countries see the war. For over 3 years, Russia has used its air power as a threat, not just against Ukraine, but as a show of strength across the region. Now that power has been challenged, not by NATO, not by the US, but by Ukrainian operatives working within Russian territory. This operation breaks the rules Russia thought it controlled. For Ukraine, Operation Spiderweb is a turning point. It shows that despite being outgunned and outnumbered, they can still control the timing, the direction, and the reach of this war. It's a shift from defending ground to shaping the battlefield. And most importantly, it proves that Russia's own land is no longer safe from the consequences of its actions. More strikes like this are possible. More silent build-ups. More hidden drones. And Russia now has to ask itself a question it's never had to before. Who's watching us from the inside? Ukraine is not claiming victory. It's not claiming peace. But it is claiming capability. And after Operation Spiderweb, no one can deny it anymore. This war has entered a new chapter. And nothing will go back to the way it was. If this shocked you, share it. Comment below. Do you think Russia will strike back harder? Or has the balance finally shifted? Don't forget to subscribe. More real updates are coming. No filters. No fake talk. Just the truth. Because the world deserves to know.